Welcome to the Roundtable for the 6th of June, 2025. I'm Rudyard Griffiths, co-founder of The Hub, joined by Sean Speer, our editor-at-large. Sean, how are you? Up here in Toronto, we got wildfire smoke, nothing like what's happening in parts of the West and actually parts of the States now. Any signs of that haze drifting down to you in New York City?
No, not yet. It's hot here though, Roger. We it turned on a dime. We went from spring to summer seemingly overnight, and so yeah, if you like the heat, this is the place to be.
Yeah. And Sean, last week we talked to you. You had a big frog in your throat. You sound a lot better. I'm glad. Can we report that the Spear household has rounded the corner on your latest kind of viral assault brought on by
Yeah,
your wonderful children?
we're mostly on the mend. I'm pleased to report.
I can hear it in the timbre of your voice. That's terrific. Well, Sean, let's have you then, with your rediscovered voice, thank our Hub Fellows this week. We had three new fellows come on board, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it sure is a great week. And I want to thank, in particular, Cheryl W. and Robert B. from Calgary, and Rachel C., someone we know, someone, in fact, who I had the pleasure of working with for a long time from Ottawa, coming on board to support the hub. So thanks to the three of them and the hundreds and thousands of others who support us as fellows and heroes. We couldn't do our work without you.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Sean, let's do this on the show today. I think in the first half, let's talk about the Trump-Musk blow up, because we like to follow U.S. conservative politics because it kind of matters to Canada. And I think, you and I had spent some time on the intricacies of the different factions inside MAGA last year. And I think it helped the Hub make an accurate prediction that we did last fall that, tariffs were coming and that this would be a very disruptive president in his own right, but also to the Canada-U.S. relationship. So let's unpack the consequences of the Musk-Trump blow up for Canada. And then on the back half of the show, when we join our Hub Heroes and Hub Fellows, let's talk a little bit about just the challenges that we're having at the Hub that I think everybody in the kind of small C conservative world is with covering and kind of critiquing, hopefully in a value-added way, the early days of the Carney government. There's some stuff going on that would be great to get our community's input and reaction to regarding how do we best hold Mark Carney and this new Liberal government to account. But let's start with the Musk-Trump blow up. Unless you were living in a foxhole for the last 48 hours, you are aware, Sean, of what did we see yesterday?
Yeah, it's really something, isn't it? And it stems in large part, Roger, at least the immediate catalyst is growing tensions within the Trump coalition over this major tax and spending bill before the Congress. A subject, by the way, that we covered with David Frum, for those listeners and viewers who want to go a bit deeper to understand what is literally called One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which involves reauthorizing tax cuts from 2017, effectuating some of the Doge spending cuts, but ultimately dwarfing those with a lot of new incremental spending, which has Musk and other libertarians, if I can characterize them that way, critical of the Trump administration's ongoing fiscal profligacy. But the truth is, Roger, it seems to me that this was bound to happen, and that the legislation really is only the immediate source of these tensions. At the heart of the Trump coalition coming out of this election campaign is, on one hand, what you might characterize as the national populists, perhaps best personified by Steve Bannon. And on the other hand, unique to the 2025 coalition, different from the 2016 one rather, you had what is sometimes characterized as the tech right, figures like Elon Musk and David Sachs and others who shifted from the left to the right over the past decade or so for various reasons, including the excesses of identity politics in the Democratic Party. And so these two factions were critical to helping Trump win the election in 2025. But one could foresee inevitable fault lines between them when it came to policy and the kind of general orientation of the Trump administration. And so here we are, roughly 5 or 6 months in, and although this is between an immediate fight between Trump and Musk, one gets the sense, Rudyard, it reflects this deeper fissure between whether the Trump administration is going to tilt in a populist direction, a la Bannon, or whether it's going to tilt in a more techno-libertarian direction, a la Musk. And it seems pretty clear on June 6th that Bannon has kind of won that intellectual fight, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, and I think the thing to understand is the Bannon faction is also Peter Navarro, someone who went like Bannon to jail for Donald Trump in order to not testify in front of the January 6th committee. So, Sean, I agree with you. I think Canadians need to watch this carefully. We'll have to see how it plays out. But if indeed there is a fracture here between the so-called dark MAGA of Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and, the folks at Planetar and these other, Silicon Valley kind of surveillance state, companies. I'm channeling my inner Bannon there. We could see something potentially significant for this presidency with a lot of runway still to run, 3.5 plus years, if the tech right genuinely joins with Musk and there is either their movement away, a bit of distancing, and or a reassertion on the part of the Bannon faction over the White House. And let's remember, Russ Voigt is in there, in the Office of Budget and Management, a real Bannonite. You've got Steve Miller. I mean, there's a lot of people already in the Bannon faction that are at the proverbial table. So I think what we should watch in the coming days is, is there a patch up? There probably will be in the short term between Musk and Trump because it's in neither of their interests, but I was surprised to read the numbers just in how much of Musk's money went not simply to Trump and his campaign, but to just a whole bunch of U.S. congressional Republican races. And I mean big bucks, like $1 million or more into dozens of congressional races that Republicans won. Those congressmen and women are, in a sense, in no small part, beholden to Musk. He probably played a critical role in their ability to take back the House and for them to probably hold their seats come the next election. So it's fascinating to see that the president run up against an immovable object for the first time. It doesn't seem to be the usual suspects. It is this guy, the world's richest man, and his seeming appetite for just doing and saying whatever he thinks, and you do have to wonder. This has to be consequential, does it not, Sean? In the weeks and months to come.
Yeah, Trump has rolled most of his political opponents. Think, for instance, the 2015 Republican primary, where he took down big figures like Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and others as if they were effectively children. Musk, as you say, may be Trump's most formidable opponent, not just because of his financial resources, but also because, of course, he owns X, which is for Trump world, kind of the public square. But at a more fundamental level, it is interesting to think about this coalition that emerges after 2025 and the extent to which it now looks to be at significant risk. There were some areas of overlap. I mentioned the excesses of identity politics is something that probably a figure like Bannon and Musk would have agreed upon. A kind of general sense of restoring American greatness, particularly around this idea of making and building things. Similarly, you could probably find some overlap. But on some core issues, Rudyard, there were nascent signs of tension. You'll recall the early flare-up on questions around immigration
Yeah.
and visas, particularly for high-skilled workers, where Musk and others on the tech right sided with a pretty small L liberal approach, and Bannon and people like him were opposed. Tariffs in an area where it seems pretty clear there are tensions. And then fundamentally, some of the key provisions in the bill, people like Musk and others are generally supportive, Rudyard, of what you might characterize as conservative orthodoxy when it comes to lowering taxes on capital and businesses and high income earners, et cetera. And Bannon, I think if he had his druthers, that tax cut bill would look a lot different.
Yeah.
It would focus instead on tax reductions for low income earners, things like the taxes, eliminating taxes on tips, which is one of the few ways in which we see the populists expressing themselves in this package. So this is really a kind of a fundamental tension, and I'll turn it to you in a second. But what's interesting is I've always saw J.D. Vance, Rudyard, as the figure who could possibly straddle these different worlds. On one hand, his populist credentials are well established. Of course, he's the author of Hillbilly Elegy. On the other hand, he worked in Silicon Valley. He's close to Thiel, who, for all intents and purposes, helped him win the Ohio Senate seat, which catapulted him into the vice presidential nomination. And so I suspect that he himself is feeling pretty tense today, Rudyard. On one hand, he needs to kind of affirm his loyalty and support to the president. On the other hand, I'm sure you saw yesterday Musk posting about possibly impeaching Trump and replacing him with Vance. So in addition to this bigger coalitional project, I think a lot of eyes will be on Vance and how he navigates what's going to be a pretty complicated coming days and months in Trump world.
Yeah. I was going to go there too. I think Vance is the big winner in this. I mean, it doesn't hurt that Musk was in his fit of peak yesterday, was calling for Trump's impeachment and for J.D. Vance to become president. I mean, that clearly shows where Musk's favor, at least in the future, could lie. And I expect we'll see out, if we haven't already, some kind of statement of loyalty on the part of J.D. Vance to Donald Trump, because he knows right now certainly where his bread is buttered. Well, yes. Sean, we'll have to continue to watch this, because I think it matters for our trade discussions here in Canada with the Americans, and much more importantly, how the relationship goes forward. You could be critical of the tech bros, you could not like the extent to which their kind of use of money in politics as a blunt force instrument to advance, for instance, a very unregulated approach, let's say, to the development of artificial technology, or a whole source of other kind of business interests they have, isn't necessarily pretty or nice, but they were a bit of a choke collar on the more excessive parts of the true MAGA base of the Trump movement and party. And we'll have to see what happens with the Bannons and the Navarros and the Russ Voigts and the Stephen Millers going from here. Sean, let's take a break and say goodbye to our complimentary listeners and viewers. So just thank them for joining us for this first half on YouTube and on our podcast channel, or on our website, www.thehub.ca. If you enjoy these conversations and you want to be part of the entire Friday Focus episode, join as a Hub Hero. You can do that for as little as $1 a week, and you also get the entire back half of our twice monthly conversations with David Frum, full access to our website, a whole bunch of other perks, and you support our independent journalism not funded by government subsidies. So head over to thehub.ca and grab your Hero membership right now, and then here's that bye-bye to our complimentary audience. Bye-bye.